Hey folks, Jeff Gonzalez with Trident Concepts, and today I'm here to do a debrief from my participation at the Sig EDC Championship Match. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to say thank you to all the folks that made that happen. The volunteers, the staff, and of course Sig themselves. It was a great event and I had a ton of fun. I'm going to break this debrief into 3 parts. First part, we'll talk about the match, then my lessons learned, and I'll close out with my gear. So let's start with the match. It's a 3-day match, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is nice because the previous matches were only 2 days. And I feel that 3rd day really helped with the flow and minimizing some of the log jam. The other thing that I really liked about the changes to this match was that they made it more applicable to a broader audience. And they did that by having 4 divisions. The first division was the micro compact pistol, most popular EDC gun, and they created a division strictly around them. That's the division that I shot. Then there was compact iron sights, compact red dot, and then full size. Now, because this is a EDC match, you are required to shoot from concealment and fully concealed, no open top or no open front type garments, unless you were in the full size division, in which case you could have the open front garment. So I really like that. The other thing that they did was the match had much more dynamic theme. There's a lot more movement, moving from one position to the next, moving to cover, away from cover. So I really like that. And on top of that, they created the opportunity for more rounds to be fired. And that was through steel and more paper and just in general a higher round count than what I shot in the previous matches. Which again is why I went there. Well, it's one of the reasons why I went there was to have fun and shoot a lot. But you know, when you have that opportunity to just really increase that round count, I think overall people really appreciate that. One of the other things that I thought they did really well was a change to a different paper target. And still a silhouette type target that's used in other different types of competition settings, but this one is the first time that I saw at this EDC match. Still had the A, C, and D zone, but the head was a little different. The ocular cranial cavity plus the neck and spine area created what they call a K zone or kill zone. And what that meant was if you delivered 1 shot into the K zone, that would equal 2 shots into the A zone. Again, I really, really like that. You know, the purpose behind the EDC match, and what I try to remind people to consider, to think about, is to provide an opportunity for those that carry regularly, frequently, or are considering carrying, the opportunity to have the ability to shake out your gear, to put yourself under a little bit of pressure to see how your drawstroke works, to see maybe what changes you need to make to your gear or to your carry locations or to just all these things that you might not realize or recognize in just static training or just your average trip to the range. And I really encourage you, whether you like competitions or not, if you carry concealed, it's a great opportunity for you to learn a lot about yourself and your gear. And I really encourage people to consider it. So let's start talking about lessons learned. We're going to break them down into 3 buckets: the good, the bad, and the add. When it came to the good, one of the things that I set forth as a prime directive for my experience at the match was to engage targets at the maximum distance allowed. That meant that if I could step into the shooter's box and hit a target from a pretty far distance away, that was my goal. Rather than maybe move closer or move to a different position to engage that same target, I was trying to engage that target at the farthest distance I could. And the reason behind that is that we live by 2 maxims. We teach this, we try to really pound this into people, which is maximize your distance and minimize your exposure. So if I can extend the range, I now start to diminish the luck factor in a gunfight. And I now start to take advantage of the skill factor. And since I'm the better skilled, I have the better survivability rate. Same thing with minimizing your exposure. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So for me, every time I could to take a shot at those further ranges, I was. And I mean, there were some shots that I took that were like 40, 45 yards. It was a pretty good distance. And, you know, angles were also extending the ranges. So I really liked that. And that kind of like was a proof of concept for what I try to do and how I look at things and how I think of things in a sense. The next thing that I did really well and that I'm grateful for was the headshots. Again, creating that K or using that K-zone target created the opportunity or incentivized more shooters to take headshots. I'm a big believer that a headshot is the best way at stopping a fight, but it's not always easy to do. They created more opportunities for you to try it. Sometimes the targets were obscured by hard cover or no-shoots, hostages, and you could move to clear up your field of fire, or you could just take that headshot. And on more than one occasion, I took the headshots, and sometimes I took more than one headshot, because again, it's just one of those things. You know, if I'm going to shoot one shot to the head, I'm probably going to shoot two. So I understand that maybe from a time perspective, that didn't really help me out. But you know, some of these things that I'm doing, I'm not doing strictly for the competitive value. I'm doing more for how I govern myself from a tactical point of view. So headshots were a big thing. And I don't think I actually missed any of the headshots that I took, which was, again, good. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but pressure testing, you know, the draw stroke is so important. What we're basically training for is to react to a deadly force threat. And we're going to be behind the power curve. We're going to be under a lot of pressure. Your draw stroke has got to be clean. It's got to be consistent. When I say the word, I try to not use the word fast when I'm describing the draw stroke, because I could have a fast draw stroke that gives me a crummy, crappy grip, and that's going to produce crummy, crappy shots. So the most important thing is being able to clear your cover garment, get a good firing grip, and then quickly move from the holster to the target and start delivering rounds. And again, that was reinforced throughout the match with the defeat methodology. In the beginning, we had some threat of rain, so I was worried about, you know, wearing Gore-Tex. But I shouldn't say I was worried about wearing Gore-Tex. I didn't want to wear the Gore-Tex, but it looked like it was raining in other parts on the drive in, so I was like, ugh. But truthfully, with my defeat methodology, it wouldn't have mattered. So then let's talk about the bad. And to be honest, the bad wasn't too bad, but it's things that I want to improve, areas that I want to make improvements on. And we're going to start with my first shot. I need to increase that first shot. What I mean by that is sometimes it was just a part of the shot, the degree of difficulty of the shot. Taking those longer shots at 25, 35, even 45 yards meant that I had to settle in a little bit for that level of precision that I needed for that shot. But there were plenty of other times where I was over aiming on shots that I didn't need to do. And to decrease that first shot means that I've got to be more reliant on my skill and less reliant on trying to validate everything that's going on. That's a lot of overthinking that I do, and that's one of the things that I talk about. We use the term no mind. Get out of your own mind, just do what you have trained yourself to do. And I struggle like everybody else. Every now and then I get warped into some sort of, really complex setting, and I think as opposed to do. So that's one thing, and it'll come into something else that I'm going to talk about in the debrief as well. Next was target focus. There were 10 stages, and in the way that we progressed through the match, we entered into a stage that had a lot of steel right away. And when I am shooting steel, I am super fixated on the target, on the steel target. It just is so I don't know why, it's just like it goes back years. It's so easy for me to be target focused on steel. Paper targets, on the other hand, that's a different story. I don't know why, but that exists. So I noticed that I had this laser focus on the steel. And when I went to the next stage where we were shooting paper, I noticed that focus was not quite as intense. And I was like, why? Why is it not that intense? So throughout the rest of the match, fortunately this happened early in the match, throughout the rest of the match, I tried to increase that intensity on that target focus. And, you know, for the most part, it did work, but it was just an opportune time to see something I was doing poorly, make a correction in real time, and then still have enough stages left to actually see those corrections show some positive outcomes. So that was good. Another thing that I really need to improve upon, and I say this with a caveat, are speed reloads. So as we teach speed reloads, it is based around the situation, what's happening. And the situation will always dictate. In this case, what are the opportune times to conduct a speed reload? Well, if the target is secure, if the fight is over, that's an easy one. If you have fought your way to cover, that's another easy one. If the situation is in a lull, that's another easy one. So, you know, in a competitive atmosphere, you have the opportunity to walk the stages, kind of pre-plan what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, which is great, and I think that's awesome. But that's not always genuine or reflects genuinely in a real defensive gun use. I'm not going to know how many targets I have. I'm not going to know what the round count is for each of those targets. So there's a little degree of artificiality there. And this is what I remind people about. We are training for an unknown, unknowable event. So did it help me to count the number of rounds I was going to fire in and then figure out, okay, at this transition I need to do a speed reload? Sure, it would have helped me from the competitive side of the house, but is that really helping me more in the tactical side? So I kind of struggled with that. But what I ended up doing was I ended up just trying to make some command decisions in midstream about, okay, you know, I'm moving from this position to that position. I'm going to go ahead and do my speed reload. And one of the things that I noticed was, you know, that's an area that I need to really work on. I need to be more fluid in that speed reload. I need to think of that speed reload the same way I would think about a combat reload, which is urgency. You got to get that thing up and running super fast. But again, when we talk about the speed reload and the parameters where we will perform it, there's not always that urgency. So that's kind of the difference between those two, the combat and the speed reload, is that there's a specific degree of urgency on the combat reload when you run out of ammo. Not as much with the speed reload. So I need to kind of create a little artificiality there, but I look forward to doing that. Let's talk about what I want to add. The big thing that I want to add is makeup shots. As I'm doing demonstrations for students, I work so hard to be as flawless with my technique so that they can emulate or see something and try to emulate it as best as possible. And that does two things for them. That helps them to visualize how they want to see themselves, and it validates the technique that I'm trying to get across. So what I don't often do is I don't often have the opportunity to you know, in front of a class setting, I don't often have the opportunity to do makeup shots. And I could see how that kind of hurt me, because when the opportunity was present for me to do makeup shots, there was a little bit of trepidation before I finally was like, no, I need to start doing these. And I realized that again in the middle of the match and was able to course correct and see better outcomes towards the back end of the match. So one of the things that I need to try to do, and this is the other beautiful thing about shooting with a red dot, is that you are so target focused. So you can literally see where your rounds are impacted and make quick on the call makeup shots. I just need to let that happen. Other things that I want to add is more dynamic movement. Most of the time when we're moving, I'm engaging a target. I'm moving as I'm engaging that target, or I'm moving to a piece of cover. And what I want to try to do is I want to create more opportunities to have more dynamic movement in between those two different conditions. That's the key thing. Like in between those two, I want to have more dynamic movement. And that's just stuff that I have to work on my own. The last thing that I want to add, and it's not so much add, but I just need to remind myself, is be more instinctual with my shooting. That goes back to that earlier comment about no mind. When I talk about instinctual shooting, it means stop thinking about the act of shooting. Start observing. Just let it happen. Because when I'm in that mode, when I'm just observing and I'm just letting things happen, shit just happens. I'm not having to think, oh, I screwed that up, I need to do this better. Oh gosh, I screwed that up, I need to do this better. And it's just this one thing after another. And you're always kind of in a reactionary mode when you're thinking your way. I want to reserve my mental capacity to try to solve the tactical problem. I don't want to use any of my brain juices to try to figure out how to shoot. And it just takes letting go of those reins. It just takes just letting go and just doing it. And sometimes because I want to do good, because I want to make the shot, because I want to look good in front of other people, I will create that artificiality of trying to think my way through it as opposed to just do it. So those were the big ads for me. Let's talk about gear. So because this was an EDC match, and even if it wasn't an EDC match, I'd probably still shoot my EDC gun because in just about all of our pistol classes, I am shooting an EDC gun. So for this case, I shot my P365, what I call X Micro, and what that is, it's basically a standard 10-round magazine frame married up with an XL slide. So the nice thing about the 10-round frame is a very short frame. It's very easy to conceal. I can do this with my eyes shut, easy shut in many cases. And it affords me the opportunity to use this type of platform in so many different other settings. You know, unfortunately, I came back from New Hampshire. I had to go to a family funeral, and I'm in formal wear, but it really didn't matter what I was carrying because, you know, that micro just allows me to adjust my wardrobe, not necessarily adjust my carry method. And when I mean adjust my wardrobe, meaning I had to wear a formal attire. The nice thing about that XL slide is that in this case, I'm running a ported slide. And I know that there's a lot of folks that still are maybe unsure about the benefits of the ported slides, and these are not new. They've been around for a long time. The one thing that's nice about this particular model is that it's integrated into the slide. So there's no add-on, there's no screw-on, there's no aftermarket stuff. It's integrated. And I think they're one of the few companies that actually does that at a production level. I know there's plenty of aftermarket things, and I know in the past there were manufacturers that did this, but right now they're doing a great job, particularly with these small compact pistols. There are still some concerns about muzzle velocity, about flash, about all these things. And you know what I tell people is, hey, go out and experiment on your own. I've done muzzle velocity testing with these ported slides, and to be honest, I'm really worried about what I'm losing. I'm already shooting a short gun, so my muzzle velocity is already below normal from a full-size pistol. But you know, from a defensive gun use at these close ranges, I'm also not really that much, not that concerned. Flash is another thing people are worried about, you know, blinding themselves or getting frag into their face from those close range kind of contact shots. I haven't shot somebody at close range with a contact type shot scenario with a ported gun, so I don't know how that's going to work. But in just the low light stuff that I've done and just the contact shooting that I've done on the training range, I'm not worried about that either. I would say that if I had to really give you some sort of argument, it would be the lesser of two evils, because the benefits of when I'm normally shooting with that ported slide well outweigh any kind of detriments. The next thing was holsters and mag pouches. I ran Tennecor's product line, which was a strong side inside the waistband holster with a inside the waistband mag pouch that I carried at about the 10 o'clock position. And to be honest, I love that setup. It's my go-to. It's what I carry just about all the time. I have a strong side holster to accommodate the various guns that I generally carry, which is the micro, the macro, and my compact. So between those three sizes, I'm covered across the board, so I really like it. One of the things that I like about that particular holster is the ability to make adjustments. It's got so many different adjustable ranges between ride height, ride cant, all these other features that are really nice, and it puts you in the driver's seat as far as tweaking it to make it work for you. Big fan of that. One thing that I did notice about my mag pouch was I've been carrying it now for maybe about a year, and in the past I would use a Neo Mag to carry a spare magazine. So one of the things that I discovered was a training scar from that Neo Mag. So if I had to do a combat reload, I caught myself twice reloading from the Neo Mag versus my mag pouch. That's something I've got to work on too. Ammo was another thing. This gun was zeroed with the 147 grain hollow points, which are the rounds that I carry in that gun. And when I was out there, I shot 124 grain ball ammo. So a concern that I had was, what am I looking at as far as shifts between point of aim, point of impact? And to be honest, when I did my zero check, I really didn't see anything. I mean, obviously there's a shift, but as long as I'm doing my part, it's going to be negligible. Most of those shots that we had at the match were close enough to where it wasn't even an issue. And the shots that I took at the further ranges, knowing where that shift to point of aim, point of impact, to be honest, there's only one time that I remember kind of making a hold, adjustment to my hold to get those shots. All the other times, I just center mass, just let her rip. And then of course I didn't get all A's on those far shots, but it was, you know, good enough for government work. So, you know, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, there was so much information coming at me, so much value that I took away from the match. And again, I really encourage folks to consider this. My hope is that they're going to take this on the road to other regions within the country so that people that can't travel to New Hampshire have the opportunity to do this. If you have, you know, a local match that allows you to work from concealed, I really encourage you to get out there just to shake out your gear and figure out what you want to work on, or to validate that you're doing everything right. That's awesome. So folks, if you got questions or comments, post them down below. If you attended the match and you want to put some input in, please feel free. I would love to interact with you. Next year, I'm planning to be there again, and if you come out to next year's match, make sure you come out and say hi. If you're not in the squad that I'm in, no big deal. Just, you know, during one of the breaks or whatnot, just come over and say howdy. And, you know, that's about all I got for today, folks. So until then, stay safe or be dangerous. Adios.